Hi, this is Ty from Nav. I'm excited to be here with you today. We're going to talk about small business budgeting and borrowing. And basically, I'm going to share some things that I learned as a small business owner that I think will benefit a lot of you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you. I think this is, excuse me, I think this is important because this is not when I was first in business, this is not stuff I was really interested in. And I bet you there's a lot of you out there that are just like that. And I think we need to take, as small business owners, a more strategic approach to how we capitalize our business, how we borrow. And when you think that only 40% of small businesses are profitable, that scares the holy crap out of me, because that's a lot of businesses that are just struggling to keep their head above water. And did you know that 84% of business failures in the United States are due to poor cash flow? And I mean, that is just, you know, they say cash flow is king, and it really is. If you can manage your cash flow properly, you will be a profitable business. And, it doesn't even really matter how much money you're taking in every month and how much money it's costing you to do business every month. Even if you are bringing in more money than what you're spending, it could be a negative cash flow situation. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So one of the things that I found as a small business owner, we weren't in what you would call a seasonal business. However, the business cycle did ebb and flow. We had busier seasons than others. And so I think to be strategic in how you borrow, you need to kind of anticipate your business cycle, recognize those times when business kind of ebbs a little bit, and accommodate for the anticipated lag in income. Borrow wisely. And I mean, I guess that goes without saying, but you look at borrowing money as a strategy rather than a reaction. In other words, look to the future, kind of think about when you're going to need money and why you're going to need money. And this will help you research your options. It'll help you prepare so that when it is time to borrow, you can access the capital that you need. So borrow wisely may be kind of an understatement, or even may sound oversimplistic, but look at borrowed capital as a strategy to increase profits. My dad used to say there are only really two reasons to borrow. One is to increase the profitability of a particular project, and the other is to increase the value of your business. And if you take a strategic approach and you're not as reactionary, you'll be able to do that. And then take advantage of perks. You know, most small business owners are using small business credit cards, and many of them offer perks, whether they're travel perks or cash back, or they could even be perks at the office supply store or something like that. Take advantage of those perks. Don't ignore them. That that is actually cash in hand, because most of the perks center around things that you would be using in your business anyway. So let's talk about 5 ways to make budgeting and strategic borrowing easier. The first is to create a plan. Look into the future. If you've been in business for a couple of years, you kind of are going to have an idea as to when business is a little bit slower than another time. If you're in a seasonal business, it's pretty obvious. Look at your seasons. Consider when you're going to need money to get you through the season, or it may be when you're going to have to micromanage your expenses so that you don't spend more than what you have. We used to do that. There were times of the year when we had a little extra cash, and some of it we would sock away for those times when we didn't, and then and we would spend on ways to improve the business. If you take time to plan now, it'll make it easier to execute down the road, and it will help then, rather than reacting to a situation that just pops up. Usually those situations are things you can anticipate. And if you anticipate them early, it's going to be better for you. I'm a huge advocate of end of year planning, looking back at what happened during the year, as well as looking forward into what could potentially happen. Most business, most of the successful business owners that I know, they have a strategic plan for what's going to happen, and they're marching to that plan right now. Now, of course, you may need to pivot, may need to change your plan. It's not cast in stone, but if you start with a plan and you have milestones you want to reach, it's gonna help you in the long run. And one of those milestones would be potentially times when you need to borrow. Stick to the plan. It's really easy in the heat of battle to deviate from the plan, and sometimes you need to. Sometimes it's okay. But if you do, make sure you consider the costs of deviating from the plan, and try to compensate for those changes. It could be an expense that crops up that maybe you weren't anticipating. Maybe it's an opportunity, and there's some opportunity expense that you're going to need to put forward, and maybe it's going to benefit your business to pivot. But just make sure that you don't just react, but that you sit back, pull that plan out of the drawer, take a look at it, see how this new situation is going to impact you, and make a conscious decision whether or not you're going to stick to the plan or deviate from the plan. That way, it's going to help you be a lot more strategic when it comes time to need some borrowed capital. Set goals and measure. My grandma used to say, a goal not written down is just a wish. And take the time to actually map out what you're going to do, set goals, and revisit those goals. I'm not necessarily talking about a business plan, but I think of business plans in the same way. They should be a living document that you visit often. And if you're not, it's human nature that the things we pay the most attention to are the things that we are better able to positively impact. So set some cash flow goals, for instance. And when I was first in business, one of my neighbors, he was a great friend. He and I used to run together in the morning, and he happened to be a CPA. And so every morning we would eventually wind up on to talking about what I was doing in my business. And at the time, a lot of the things he suggested, I thought were just, he's a CPA. Of course, this is how he thinks. And I kind of ignored him at first. But it didn't take me very long to realize that he had a lot of insight into how a business works and what makes a business profitable. That perspective I needed and came to really value. And so consult with your accountant or some other financial advisor if you need help on what these goals should be, how to set them, how to monitor them. But establishing goals and measuring performance against those goals will help you achieve them, because the things that we pay attention to are the things that we positively impact. So set goals and measure. And I mentioned earlier that you should every year at the beginning of the year set a strategic plan. At the midpoint of the year, sometime between June and July, take some time and look at how the first half of the year went. Did you meet your goals? Are you off? Are you doing better than planned? And then you can decide if you need to alter your plan a little bit or stick with it. Stay on top of your accounts receivable. I cannot even tell you how important I think this is. It didn't take me very long to recognize that it didn't take very many days past due before an order to a customer became a wash. And it didn't take very many days after that before I started losing money doing business with those customers. So your accounts receivable is incredibly important to your profitability. And if you're going to be strategic with your budgeting and cash flow, you have got to be diligent here. One of the things that I did that I felt like hurt me in the very beginning, because most of us don't get into a business because we're excited about getting into the books. I do know people like that, but I wasn't one of them. And so I ended up putting off the bookkeeping for my business to the end of the day. And the end of the day was when I was tired, when I had a dozen other things I had to do before I got home, which meant it got pushed off often. Start your day with your books. If you're doing them yourself, start your day there while you're fresh, while your mind is fresh. Get through there. And if you've got customers who regularly pay you late, you've got to stay on top of them, because the later they get, the less that they're basically stealing profits away from you. Now, every business is a little bit different. For me, anything over 40 days past due, I wasn't making money on it anymore. It was just exchanging hands because of the cash flow impact in my business. Even though if you looked at the income coming in and the income going out, and the expenses going out, I had more coming in than going out. But if it was taking too long to get the money in from my customers, it was hurting my cash flow and basically was negating whatever profitability there was. If it was 50 days past due, I was losing money. I wasn't making anything on those orders. In fact, it was costing me. So stay on top of your accounts receivable. That is critical. Another thing my grandma used to say is put away for a rainy day. My grandparents were farmers, and I noticed as a boy that what they did is when it was the harvest time, they worked really hard and they put away things for the winter. My grandpa used to work long hours. He would be out until dark every day, and he would say, "You got to make hay while the sun shines." And I think this is good advice for businesses, to set aside a percentage of your profits just in case something happens. Aim to have 3 to 6 months of operating expenses stashed away. And I think that those businesses that had a rainy day fund, they needed to use it this year. This has been a rough year for small business owners. So setting aside a little bit of money every month, even if it's not 3 to 6 months to get started, even if it's just a month, just don't give up. It's amazing how small incremental changes have a huge impact down the road. And so don't think in terms of what you're going to be able to do in the next 6 months. Think about what you're doing now and how that is going to maybe affect your business a year from now. Maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, you'll have 6 months of operating capital in the bank, and it just didn't happen. It just, over time, a little bit, it makes a huge difference. Here's a couple more tips for strategic borrowing. Borrow what you need for your specific goals. Years ago, I was on a panel of lenders, and we were talking to a group of Amazon sellers. And one of the questions was, how much should I borrow? And when should I borrow? And one of the lenders said, borrow as much as you can, every time you can, because you never know when you're going to need to borrow. And I disagree with that advice. Borrow what you need when you need it, and don't borrow more than what you need, because borrowed capital, even if you're getting the lowest interest rate possible with the SBA or with the local bank, it doesn't matter. There's still a cost associated with it, and it can negatively impact your cash flow. So you want to make sure that what you're borrowing is what you need and no more. I used to occasionally listen in on the sales calls of our sales team, and it was amazing when they would say, how much money are you looking for? And the small business owner would say, well, how much can I get? That's not the right answer. I'm looking for, this is what the need I'm trying to fill, and I'm looking for enough money to fill that need. Review your financing options regularly. In other words, kind of pay attention to what your credit profile is and what options are available to you, because Options change. If you were to ask me 18 months ago what it would look like this year, I would have given you a different answer than what I would give you for today. A lot of lenders, when the 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 coronavirus hit, they pulled back and they stopped lending. Many lenders cut back lines of credit, and they changed their criteria for who they were lending to. So stay on top of what's available and what your options are. And don't be afraid to take small steps towards big goals. You know, if I was a small business owner today, one of the things that I didn't take advantage of that I should have, as much as I should have, are things like vendor credit. It's not a small business loan, but those 30, 60-day terms, they help you build your business credit. And there are small steps towards a bigger goal. Maybe this year you can't get that $100,000 loan, but by working with your vendors and with business credit cards, you can build a profile that'll allow you to hit that bigger goal down the road. So don't be afraid to take small steps towards bigger goals. So you can get started today. Set your goals. There are other webinars that you can look at that will help you create a business plan and prepare for business financing. And you can review financing matches at NAV as your business grows. And you can also check your personal and business credit at NAV. So get started today. Don't put it off. Don't procrastinate. These are things that you can start doing right now. I hope this was informative and interesting to you. I hope it was helpful. Thank you very much for tuning in and listening, and best of luck for the rest of the year.